Now, these next three games are my top three games. The top three games, at one point, all three of these were going to be number one. But then as I went further into each of them, I was like, okay, no, this will be number one. But then I was like, no, maybe this won't be number one. And then this won't be number one. Finally, I decided which one was going to be the order. It would be whichever was going to be 3, 2, 1. And yeah, but before we get there, I'm going to mention the honorable mention. Honorable mention one. Honorable mentions ones. Games that I did play but didn't make the list for a reason or another. I mentioned this at the beginning of our part one, depending on how I release this. I don't know if it's going to be one full thing or one split in parts if I still have the whole strike things, which I'm pretty sure I probably will. I mentioned The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. That's on the honorable mentions list. I played the game to completion. I collected all the masks, collected all the heart pieces, collected everything in that game. And it's on the honorable mentions because it came out before on the N64. I even played the N64 version. I never beat it on the N64. I only beat the first temple. And yeah. But I love the game. The game was an amazing game. Legend of Zelda is a great game series. And yeah. One that I think was under a lot of people's radars actually is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, Legend of the Duelist or something like that. I can't remember. It's out for the PS4 and Xbox One. And you just basically play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I love Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. And it's it's Yu-Gi-Oh! You can play through all the major duels through all four series. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, 5Ds, Zexal, and then you play a practice duel in the fifth series of, I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, that's a fun game and easily picked up for $15. I see no reason why you shouldn't get it. It's a fun, fantastic game. Persona 4 Dancing All Night. This game, it was a fun game. It's not the greatest rhythm game ever. I mean, besides the whole display thing, that's not the greatest. The display is completely covering half the screen, unfortunately, so you will miss up a lot of times. And yeah, I mean, that one was such a hard one to pick. I was like, hey, because I had I had like 11 games for my top 10, and I was like, oh, okay, these have to be up here for sure. And then it got to like number 10 was between Until Dawn and Persona 4 Dancing All Night. And I was like, well, to be honest, Until Dawn was a lot better than Dancing All Night. Until Dawn had a better story. It just looked better, and it was just better overall, gameplay wise, story wise. Not to take anything away from Dancing All Night, but Dancing All Night had, in my opinion, it had the weakest story of all the Persona 4 spin-offs. That's Ultimax and Arena. And Dancing All Night, it just missed it. It just really missed it. It was a fun game. It's a fun game. The music is great, though. Like, you can't take that away from Persona 4 or Persona series in general. The music in Persona is always going to be top-notch, in my opinion. So that's why that didn't make the list. Other honorable mentionable ones are, of course, the King's Quest. Only episode 1 came out this year. Maybe if all the episodes come out next year, it could be on my top 10 list. So we'll see about that. Minecraft Story Mode. I actually haven't played the game yet, but it's on my honorable mentions, even though majority of them came out this year. I believe episode 4 just came out this Tuesday. But it'll wrap up in 2015, and depending on how good it is and depending on all the other games, I think I might squeeze it in. I'll say it will come out. I say if the last episode of these episodic series comes out on a year, then that's the year it contends for. So 2016 it might have that one. All right. Now that we're done with the honorable mentionables, let's talk about the games that I didn't play but would have maybe liked to, and maybe they would make the list, maybe they wouldn't. Let's just get this off the bat right away. Every single Wii U game. I don't have a Wii U. So unfortunately, those games are always going to be out until I get a Wii U. I mean, I could get a Wii U soon. I might get a Wii U maybe next year. It all depends. But we'll have to see about that. So, Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. I love Kirby. He is my favorite Nintendo character. As a matter of fact, my last year top 10 game, I never made a video, but I made like a list type thing on a forum. Kirby Triple Deluxe was, I believe, my top 4, and I love that game so much. Triple Deluxe was just an amazing game for the 3DS. It was such a fun game. Splatoon, I heard a lot of great things about Splatoon. Fortunately, haven't played it. I could get it. I mean, there's that Wii U that comes with Smash Bros. And Splatoon. I just don't want it, I guess. It's too much money too, and let's not get into that yet. Mario Maker. In my opinion, I don't think that game would even be in my top 10 even if I did play it. It's just, you make Mario levels. There's nothing wrong with Mario levels. It's just Mario levels. To be fair, I think Mario's the most overrated character in video game history ever. But it's whatever. His story's so repetitive, blah, 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 blah. You always gotta rescue Peach, you got kidnapped by Bowser. Sure, they put some twists and turns in some of them, like the 3D World Wii U game they had, but they're not that great. No, Mario's an amazing game. Like, the first game, I still play it because I have it on my 3DS, but yeah. Alright. Now, these are all games I didn't play again, so let's get it. Dying Light. I mean, it looked like a fun game when it first came out. You're in a world with zombies and yada yada yada. Just not my kind of cup of tea. I guess I should throw this out of the way as well. Halo 5 Guardians. I don't have an Xbox, so any Xbox exclusive games are out the window as well. So, although I heard a lot of great things about Guardians, fortunately I couldn't play it. The Order 1886. I mean, I could have played it. I mean, I've heard mixed reactions. It's too short for how much it costs, not that much replay value, yada yada yada. Dragon Ball Xenoverse. Probably the best Dragon Ball game there was out there. Unfortunately, never got a chance to play it. Maybe one day I will. I mean, it looks like a fun game. I won't mind playing it, so, well, we'll just have to see. Resident Evil Revelations 2. Another Resident Evil game. I would have liked to have played it. Just never got the time, really, to play. I never really got the time to play a lot of games that came out this year, unfortunately. I'm glad I actually played like at least 11 games that came out this year. There's so many other games too. Mortal Kombat X, or 10, if you're going by Roman numerals. Again, and plus, it's a fighting game. I'm not that big in fighting games besides Persona 4. I mean, I don't mind playing Persona fighting game. It's just, I haven't played a Mortal Kombat game since Mortal Kombat 3. I mean, I did do a few matches in 9, but I'll just keep it that way, I guess. I did play Mortal Kombat X, but I never played the story mode. I only played matches, so it's a fun fighting game. Like, it put fighting games back on the map, so that's good. So unfortunately, Street Fighter V won't be on my list next year. I mean, I might pick it up. I don't know yet. I'm still debating about that. The Witcher 3. Now, that was the game of the year for a lot of people, especially at the Game Awards that happened in, I think, early December. I never played it. I mean, it's a too big of an open world game, which might be a little hypocritical of me to say, because my top 3, I think, are all considered open world games. But it was too much of an open world, and it looked like fun. Probably would have been a game I would have picked up, but again, no time. Mad Max, no time. And I wasn't really that interested in it to begin with, so I like the movie, so I already talked. Just Cause 3. I thought about picking it up, but then I heard that it had so many problems, and it's just no. It's besides I wasn't that big into it anyway. Like I never played any of the other Just Cause games, but again, another hypocritical thing to me to say, considering what could be in my top three. Yeah. And Star Wars Battlefront, the big Battlefront game that everybody was waiting for. I played the beta for it, and I was debating about getting it, but it's such a multiplayer based game. It's like there's no single player. I mean, there is a single player campaign, I guess, but that's not even considered single player. I mean, I had fun playing the beta, but I mean, I'm not that great in these kind of games, unfortunately. First person shooters, not my best friend. But yeah, those were my honorable mentions and games I would have liked to play, but just didn't have the time or not. You know, looking back on it now, I probably could have shortened that list a bit. Because, like I said, Mad Max, I lost interest in that almost like as soon as September was over. Like, it was that. It's just September was over, and that's when it came out. And it's like, oh, yeah, Mad Max was the game that came out, wasn't it? All right, so let's get back to it. The final top three games that made it my game of the years. Number 3, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. This game was technically my first ever Metal Gear Solid game I played, so I can't really give it the justice that it probably deserves as like a review slash talk about thing. But I did read up about all the other Metal Gear Solid games that came out before this. I did play Metal Gear Solid 1, but I never really beat it. It was one of the games that my friends had that I played, and then I just fell off the map for it. But then when I heard about MGS5 or MGSV, I was okay, maybe I'll play it. And then I picked up Ground Zeroes because I could get it for cheap. They were having a sale. And then, of course, the next month it was free for PlayStation Plus members. But I digress. It was fun. I like the whole stealth thing of it. You know, you take control of Big Boss or Venom Snake. It takes place 9 years after the events of Ground Zeroes. You wake up from a coma, you lose your arm, so it gets replaced by a robotic one, and you have to rebuild everything while also taking revenge on the one that did this to you. It's all about revenge. And I have to say, part 1, this game had 2 parts. It had part 1 revenge, part 2 race. Part 1 was the weakest out of all of them. Obviously, and that's the sad thing, because you played all these missions. You go through all these missions. Some of them probably were not necessary, and then some of them were actually affected the story. And then you get to the last mission of part 1, where you face the Metal Gear Sahelanthropist, and you beat it, but you never got to really face the villain Skullface, which is upsetting because you really wanted to face Skullface. I know I definitely wanted to face him. Like, I wanted to fight him. I wanted to kill him myself, but no, you don't get that. You don't get that at all. You don't get anything of it. And then, of course, it does, in one of the missions in part 2, or part 1, is you actually pick up some kids in Africa. You pick up a kid named Eli, who, surprise, surprise, turns out to be Liquid Snake in the later games. And, of course, Skullface is working with the Man on Fire, who turns out to be someone from one of the other Metal Gear Solid games. I know, I'm so sorry. Like I said, I can't do this justice. I can't do it the justice it deserves to have, because I never really played all the other ones, and it's been a long time since I've read up on any of the other Metal Gear Solid games. But I digress. I'm going to try the best I can. And of course, Psycho Mantis is a young Psycho Mantis who is known as the third child, is also helping Skullface in a way. Now, once you're done with part 1, you begin part 2, race.
That's actually where a lot of things pick up in. In part one, there's actually this disease or virus that your base gets picked up, and if you don't isolate who has the virus, then you start losing a lot of people. And it does take some time to actually realize who has the virus. But once you do, then it's like, okay, now I just have to I have to go through all the people I have on Mother Base to get it. That's actually one thing I actually like about this game is the Mother Base stuff for it. Of course, it does get a little tiresome eventually, but then you just play it, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm having a blast with it actually, because then that's how you develop more weapons, more gear, and such. And then yeah, so then in part two is just basically it has maybe 4 new missions, and then all the other ones are just extreme missions of the previous ones, like oh, beat this mission without getting spotted by the enemy, beat this mission on super hard, but you can't use any companions and such like that. Those were a bit ridiculous, and unfortunately, that's going to probably prevent me from ever platinum this game because you have to get an S rank in all those things, and you have to do all the objectives in all those things. But I digress. I mean, the Phantom Pain was still fun. Unfortunately, due to time constraints and money wise, Konami had to tell Kojima to, hey, no, stop. The game is done, even though Kojima wasn't done with it because you lost a whole entire chapter, a whole entire mission that would have wrapped up something big that happened. Eli and the rest of the kids that you save steal the Metal Gear because you brought it back once you were done facing it after part one. And then sometime during part two, once you run around, do some side ops, just run around and not at Mother Base for a while and do those missions. That's when story happens. And that's probably another bad thing about it too. Is like you are blocked. You are prevention blocked by stuff. You have to just keep running around outside and then maybe get up on a helicopter. And maybe you'll be lucky enough that, oh, hey, you'll get a call from Miller. Be like, boss, we have a situation at base. Come back. You're like, okay. And that's the bad thing because you'll just have to keep doing side ops. You have to keep doing those missions, the repeated missions. It's just ridiculous with those, unfortunately. But overall, the gameplay was fun. I like doing the whole sneaking bit, and that is probably the most fun I've ever had in any kind of game with sneaking. Besides The Last of Us, I really like sneaking in The Last of Us a bit more because then it's a little easier to get detected in Metal Gear than it was in Last of Us. So, unfortunately, this game was not going to be my number one. It was at some point going to be my number one, but then once I learned that, oh, they took out an entire mission because Konami didn't want Kojima to finish the game or because of time and money, understandable. But unfortunately, we're never going to see that mission, which sucks because that'll tie up a lot of loose ends that the Phantom Pain left us. And then the story, part two, all of that. If you look at it this way, where it's like, wow, I'm doing these missions over again. Why am I doing these missions over again, but on a different setting? You're like, fine, I guess. It's what I'll have to do, but this game was still fun. It's still fun and probably deserves the props that it gets. It does deserve, it's a great game, and, it does tie up nicely compared to all the other Metal Gear Solid games. It does tie up some loose ends that those games left up, so that's probably the good thing about it, too. So, like I said, if you have played any of the Metal Gear Solid games before, pick this game up. It's fun. I never really played any of the Metal Gear Solid games beforehand, but I still picked it up. And I had a blast with it. Probably more so than those who did actually play it. But, it's still fair and fair to say that this game was a fun game and definitely will go down in history as a great game, or it'll go down in history as a game in general. Extraction arrived at Mother Base. Number 2, Bloodborne. Now, Bloodborne is from this company, From Software. And it's like a Souls game, Demon Souls, Dark Souls. This is also the first kind of game I have ever played like this, and I got my ass kicked in it a lot. FromSoft and the Souls games in general are notorious for being super hard games. But I managed with Bloodborne, and I enjoyed Bloodborne a lot. And it seemed to be one of those games that I could probably get behind. Yeah. I mean, I might pick up Dark Souls 3 next year or not. I'm not really 100% sure about it. What really got me with Bloodborne was I watched a couple people play it first, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to pick it up. It looks fun. I think I can manage with it. I know it's notorious for being, I know these kinds of games are notorious for being super hard, super difficult, but I managed. Like I said, I even beat the super secret hard boss. I have a video of that up if you want to watch it. And yeah, and I still plan to pick up the DLC at some point. But this game is really fun. The blood. I mean, the lore of it itself is just beautiful, and the game itself looks super beautiful. All the different areas you go through, all the other hunters you meet, even though you have to fight them and kill them. It's all so beautiful, in my opinion. It's just wonderful that this game exists, and it's beautiful. If they make a Bloodborne 2, I might pick that one up for sure, but I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I enjoy this game. This is a fun game. The Chalice dungeons, in my opinion, too, are amazingly done. As you go through the main story, you pick up some items called chalices. And what you do is you go back to the main hub world, you can say, the Hunter's Dream. And then you have to have some other stuff, and then you go do the chalice mission. So it's basically a dungeon where you go in, fight creatures, then you fight a boss at the end, and you keep going. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 4 layers, and there's a boss at the end of every layer, and you fight that boss in order to go to the next layer. It's a fantastic game. I really, really recommend this game if you have not played any of the other Souls types games, any other From Software games. This game is amazing, and it's just so much fun. The weapons are fun to pick up. What you really get, I mean, this game doesn't really have a story per se. You get like I heard from any of the other From Software games, you really get your story from the item descriptions. And you pick up an item. The first time you pick up an item, that's what I did anyway. I picked up the item, I looked at it, and I read the description. I was like, oh, that's an amazing item. That's a cool item. Definitely with the key items, you pick those up and you read them like, oh, that's an important item. I should definitely be holding on to this type thing. The weapons in general are great too. I mean, I love the sword. I love the scythe that you get at the end of the game too, where you fight the third boss. Second to last boss, because depending on how you play your game, you pick up these certain items, and if you pick up, there's 4 of these items, but you only need 3 of them to really get to the true ending. You pick it up, and then you use those 3 items, and then you face what you think is the final boss, but then actuality, once you beat that boss, the actual final boss comes down. Now, if you use those 3 items, you get to fight him. If you didn't, well, you're dead, basically. And that's what happens. There's a total of 3 endings to this game. The ending where you accept your fate or not accept your fate. Before you face what you think is going to be the final boss, you'll get a choice. You can either it'll basically be like, do you want to fight me or not? If you say no, then that's an ending. If you say yes, you fight him. And then that could result into, again, one of the other 2 endings, where if you didn't ingest certain items, you'll get an ending. If you did ingest those 3 items, then you have another boss fight, and then that leads to the true ending. Now, I have to say the true ending sucks, in my opinion. It's not the best ending. I think the third ending, the second ending, the one that you get if you didn't ingest those items, but you fight the first of the 2 final bosses. I think that one's the best one, in my opinion. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but the third one isn't that bad either. It's just so odd, like how the canon ending is the canon ending, just the way it ends. But I like that about this game. This game was fun. It was challenging. I did die a lot, but there were some bosses that I didn't die to in general. I'm like, oh, this boss was easy. So, but of course, there were some easy bosses, or some boss that a lot of people said were easy that I just died to. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible at this game. Why do I suck so badly? But no, I enjoyed this game. This is a fun game. You live by the blood, you die by the blood. Simple as that. And I really recommend if you're up for a challenge, I really recommend picking up Bloodborne, because boy howdy, does that game sure provide a challenge for you. Happy hunting. Number 1, Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was my first game that I played ever by Bethesda. It's the first Fallout game I ever played. I never played any of the Skyrims, or Oblivions, or Elder Scrolls, excuse me. I just named Elder Scrolls, Skyrim's 5, Elder Scrolls, Oblivion was 4. And Fallout 4 was my first experience with the Bethesda game. It's a big open world game. Big, big, big. You are the Vault survivor in this one, and you survive the world ending. You actually start out 200 years before you go into the Vault, and then you are rushed with your family, your wife, and your. It all depends, though. You can actually play as the wife this time, but if you're as the male, you go there with your spouse and your son, and depending on which one you pick, if you're the male, if you're female, sorry to say, but your spouse is going to be dead. But you witness your spouse getting killed and someone taking your child. So then you wake up because you're cryogenically frozen in Vault 111, and you watch that event happen, and then you wake up again, and then you venture out into the wasteland. The Commonwealth, is what it's called now. You venture out there, and you meet people and then you try to find people to help you find your son, Sean. And then there's lots of factions. There are 3 factions to begin with. You'll have the Minutemen, which is the first one you really meet. And then you get to the Brotherhood of Steel, who has been in every single other. I think they were in New Vegas. I know they were in Fallout 3. But I'm not sure if they were in New Vegas or not. I believe they were. And then the Railroad, who help synths, which are robots made to look like humans that are made by the Institute, which later on in the story, you get to the Institute, and then they become a faction that you can join. The Minutemen are like, I can't really find the right word. I don't want to say they're guns for hire, but they're people that want to make the Commonwealth good again. They're people that want to make it all good for the people living there. Brotherhood of Steel, they are after a lot of technology. They also want to make the Commonwealth good for people, but in their own ways, by destroying the Institute, because they're not big fans of super mutants or other the synths and such. And then the Railroad, they want to protect synths. They want to protect the synths that run away from the Institute and then help them with their cause to eventually overthrow the Institute. And then you get the Institute, which wants to think of the world's future as a whole, whether that be underground, which is where they're located, once all the nuclear fallout is done with. So eventually you get there, and you can side with any of them, but in all actuality, there's only really 2 endings. It's the Institute ending and then the other factions endings, which is either Railroad, Minutemen, or Brotherhood of Steel. I'm not really 100% sure how you can get a Minutemen ending, because I ended in my first playthrough of Fallout, I did the Institute ending, which so far seems to be the perfect one. I haven't really done any of the other endings yet, so I can't really say for sure which one's the best one or not. So I did that, and then once I got through that ending, I can still play as the Minutemen or play with the Minutemen because what the Institute makes you do, it makes you kill everyone in the Railroad, makes you kill everyone in the Brotherhood of Steel. So there you go. And then, of course, once you pick factions, you do make enemies out of other factions. It's just what's going to happen. So that's what happens. So eventually, I want to go back in to get the other faction endings just to see how it happens. But, it's a fun game. Fallout 4 is a fantastic game. They've recorded so many dialogue, much more dialogue than either Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3 combined with Skyrim. They recorded much more audio for that. And, your name actually gets to go in there too. But unfortunately, only one character really says your name, which kind of sucks. But hey, it's fine. But unfortunately, it doesn't work with all names. But hey, mine's on the list. But yeah, and your character actually talks too, which is fun, which is great because I think I don't want to say it's the first time. I know in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas didn't have your characters talk, I believe. I think you only had the dialogue options, and then I don't quote me on that. I've watched people play Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, but I can't remember if your character talked or not. But yeah, Fallout 4, definitely a game to pick up if you are a fan of these big open world games, fan of Bethesda, fan of Fallout 4. It had a great story, it has great gameplay, and that's why it's my number one game of 2015 because it just felt right to name this one number one out of all of them. Of course, Metal Gear Solid 5 and Bloodborne were considered to be my number one at some point, but ultimately it fell to Fallout 4 because it's so amazing. Words can't even describe how much fun I had with it. And there's so much you can do in Fallout 4. Yes, it's a lot of repetitive requests, but then eventually you find a quest that's not a repetitive one, and then you're like, yes, I can go out and do this one. And then you go out and do it, and you have a blast doing it, and I have a blast playing this game. It's so much fun. Definitely recommend picking it up if you can. Fallout 4 out, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC. Such a great game, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did playing the game.
Well, there you have it. Those were my top 10 games of 2015. Now, you may not agree with some of them. You may disagree. You might agree. You might disagree. But this is in my opinion type thing. It's my opinion. That's all I really care about in this kind of thing. It's like, hey, these games, I had fun with these games more than this game. I had fun with this game more than that game. It's an opinion-based thing. So, tough luck if you don't like it, unfortunately. But so yeah, and 2016 looks to be even a better year of video games than it was this year. We have so many coming out. We have Final Fantasy 15. We'll have Persona 5. We'll have there's just so many. I know there's more. So stay tuned for that. And of course, there's going to be a lot of Let's Plays too next year. Like I said, Final Fantasy 15, we're going to Let's Play that game. Persona 5, we're going to Let's Play that game. Kingdom Hearts 2.8, Dream Drop Distance, 0.2 Fragmentary Passage. We're going to Let's Play a lot of games, as a matter of fact. So I'm looking forward to it. And even though I'm going to keep having videos coming out for the rest of the year, but I'll see you guys next year. Have a great new year, and have a great 2016.